this is what ChatGPT spit out for me when I did it. It said, I'd be happy to help you with photography contract. However, please keep in mind that I'm an AI language model and not a lawyer. It's important to consult with a legal professional to ensure that your contract meets all necessary legal requirements and covers your specific needs. And it did go over like putting your personal, your photography business info on there. There's a deficit to, I could go deep into it, but there's a deficit in that it doesn't make sure that it connects to your LLC or a corporation. It just says photographer name. So you could end up having it connected to you personally and not to your entity, which defeats the purpose of having an LLC or a corporation to have liability protection. Goes through services, fees, and payments. The copyright uses section is laughable. I think it does its job, but it basically says copyright ownership remains with the photographer. Okay, remains with the photographer. And then client receives a license to use the photos for personal non-commercial uses. Okay, but when does the client receive that license? It's missing that information. Does the client automatically get that when they just pay only their retainer, which by the way, there's not a retainer in here. It doesn't talk about that. Does the client receive the license upon completion of all the payments? It's very vague. And then the copyright section also says prohibition on altering or selling the photos without written permission, which isn't bad, not too bad at all. The model release is a little laughable. It says consent from the client for the photographer to use the images for promotional purposes. It doesn't really get into define the promotional purposes. And it says any restrictions or preferences regarding the use of specific images. One of the great things that's majorly lacking, and I talk about this anytime I talk about model releases, is we don't want a chance of a client wanting to come back and get compensated for the use of their likeness. ChatGPT did not include in the model release section. It is literally a 2-line, I don't even know if you guys can see it, it's not even 2 full sentences. They're 2 little bullet points and doesn't include that either. And it doesn't flesh out more of the important things that are needed for a model release, like getting into specifics of how they'll be used, which is needed. This is one of the things I was mentioning when I said ChatGPT does not interface with humans like we do. Our clients, when they see promotional purposes, they're going to want to know what promotional purposes and what capacity are you utilizing my likeness, especially when we have minors or more sensitive or private type of photographs that may be used. So the model release is lacking. Does it do its job from a legal standpoint? 2 or 3 stars out of 10. What does it do for us on the client management side? I think it opens the door for more issues. So I'd almost give it a half a star out of 10, not even a full star. And then the ChatGPT contract kind of identifies delivery of photos, but it's vague. It just says final edited photos. So what is that? Are those social media sized? Are they full size? And what do you mean by final edited? Does that mean that the client gets to sit here and say, I want every little thing nipped and tucked? It doesn't define you as a photographer what your definition of editing and your processing is going to be. And here's what's funny. Under delivery of photos, it says formats in which the photos will be delivered. So actually, if you notice, this isn't actual contract terms. This is a guide of how to write a photography contract more than it is an actual contract. Because under delivery of photos, it says, for the bullet point, format in which photos will be delivered, digital prints, etc. But it doesn't get into the nuances of it. And then I go in, there's only a couple more that kind of talks about cancellations and rescheduling and just says any associated fees or refunds. Well, if you're looking to ChatGPT to create an end product for you, like a contract, tell me what the associated fees are, right? And it's not. It's this really is a guide how to write a contract, which guess what? Basically all this information is in our product description on the Law Talk. So just whenever you have anyone that says, oh, I just went over and got a ChatGPT, all they have is an outline. They don't have an actual contract at the end of the day. It talks a little bit about liability, but it doesn't really, there's no compulsory language in here, like photographer will do this or client will do that. So it's very vague on who the obligations are, when the obligations are required. And actually, now that I look at it, for fees and payment, it does mention total agreed upon fee for the services. Then it tells you to create a payment schedule, including any any deposit and balance due dates. Okay, well, again, it's an outline. It's not the actual contract for you. It does mention governing law, which is a legal miscellany that's incredibly important. We want to make sure that the governing law is going to be beneficial to us as the service provider. But it doesn't go through, if there's disputes, it does not provide attorney's fees. So if you get pulled into court by a client, and even though you win, you don't necessarily get attorney's fees unless it was in the contract. And I'm actually very surprised that that is missing out of a ChatGPT contract. If an AI language model is supposed to be so smart and it's supposed to know all this stuff and it has access to all of these things on the internet, that is one of the very first key things that you look for as an attorney for clients, is all this legal miscellany, governing law, any incorporation of other documents, dispute resolution, attorney's fees or court costs, it does have entire agreement, but like construction and all these other miscellany, and it's completely missing it. Why? Because it's not really a contract in the end. Anyways, in the end, ChatGPT ends. Please note this is a basic template and may need customization to fit your specific legal requirements. It is highly recommended to consult a legal professional for assistance in finalizing your photography contract. So really, in the end, we just need to be mindful of and I actually gave it a decent amount of prompt, but in the end, we need to be mindful that anything that we're inputting, the output that we get is only going to be as good as the input, and still is not even going to be fully what we need anyway. So let's just not be blind to AI doing all that for us. All right, let me see. What do we want to get to next? Yeah, there's so many gray areas with this right now, and I'm afraid you guys are going to walk away with more questions. But I do think you have a really good guide here to know. I'm going to check the terms. I'm going to keep tabs on that. I'm going to think about how I want to utilize AI on my business. Is it going to be a positive impact? And how am I going to leverage and utilize it? How am I going to set expectations with my clients with it? My level of protectability, like we've talked about. I think that we're seeing vast changes. Technology moves so quick. AI is going to move just as fast. You've got big names, big players putting a lot of money behind it. So we're not going to be able to avoid it. So you're going to need to get your head around this. I think on the legal side, we've already seen suits against. There was like a lawyer robot out in, I don't know where, out like Utah, out that direction. And we even had a case recently where an associate submitted a response to a complaint and used ChatGPT to write it. And all of the cases were fake. So if that just gives you a little insight into not utilizing chat for end product. I think for trying to ask answers, it's great, but you're not going to get like the human interaction portion, right? You're not going to get the nuances I talk about, like building the buyer's confidence, how to work with their psychology, because AI just can't replace that. All right, let me see what we have left on my outline. We talked about disclaimers. We have them on the Law Talk website. Instant download, copy paste, stick them on your website, utilize them. Yeah, I think that is just about everything. This was a good high level, right? Good high level between the intricacies of AI and copyright and your photography business. I don't know to say just photography, because like we've mentioned, it can be your content that you're putting out there. And if you're not putting out content, we will talk about that at a later date. But for me, let me just give you the hot take of what I'm going to do for myself. I mentioned like creating an outline. I think it's great if you are struggling for prompt ideas for putting on what to put on social media. Go and get prompt. I would not blindly, this is a really good point I just thought about. Don't just blindly copy and paste it. We've talked about for the reasons it's not protectable. You want to be unique. I believe we're going to start getting penalized by algorithms, and Google has even mentioned that they already have functionality that if they see the website copy, and universities, they've even mentioned this as well, there's a pattern in a way that an output by AI is generated, so without any tweaks, or without any substantive tweaks at least, you can tell by the syntax and the structure and the framework that it is AI created. And so I've seen research on this and output from Google and other places that have said that they will penalize. So if you're like, I'm going to go get 15 blog posts created over at ChatGPT, don't really care if it's that intensive, it's just something to get up, it may work against you SEO wise. Your search engine optimization may go. You may get penalized by Google. You may get penalized if you create it for a Facebook ad copy and stick it into Facebook.